Okay, guys, so I wanted to make basically a really short video addressing this notion some of you may have heard of the alt-right is the new punk rock. I want to assure you that it most definitely is not, and but there's a reason why these people amongst the alt-right believe that. And I think I get why they believe that. Now, so one of the things that I've always loved about the punk rock community and why I've been a lifelong devotee of it is because it's so varied. And it has within it all these other different sort of subcultures. So under this sort of umbrella of punk rock, you've got, you know, two-tones and ska, and you've got goth, and you've got straight edge, and you've got, you know, hardcore thrash, and so on and so on and so on, and vegan and riot grrrl, and all these things have their own unique and distinct features, while all sort of fitting under that larger umbrella of punk rock. So there are some some unifying ideas and similarities amidst all these sort of smaller groups. And ultimately what I'm describing are affinity groups, and which is the nature of anarcho-syndicalism ultimately. But so, like I said, I'll recap real quick. You have punk rock, right? And this is nothing new. I know, I understand. Bear with me. But yes, you have this larger thing called punk rock, and underneath it is goth and riot grrrl and vegan straight edge. You know, all these different little subsets have their own smaller subsets with underneath them, like different takes on what straight edge means to people, right? Now, all of that aside, if you look at the alt-right and right-wing circles in general, it hints at looking the same, okay? Because you have, you know, your Proud Boys that all wear their little matching uniform shit, which ultimately I just heard they're doing away with the Fred Perrys. Oh, fuckers. Second attempt at cultural appropriation of Fred Perry. Defeated. I digress. So you have all these subcultures within the right wing, right? You have militia groups, and like I said, Proud Boys. There are men's rights activist groups, and incels, and white nationalists, and straight up neo-Nazi groups, right? And they all have their distinct features and personalities and sort of looks and uniforms. And but they do have a number of also sort of unifying principles and that they all agree upon. And of course, there are you know, exceptions to every rule within the group. There's not any one standard that sort of unites them all. I mean, Trump is a big one at this point, but that's not it. It's usually another thing. And if it's not that one thing, if it's not Trump, it's going to be this other thing that unites all the groups. A lot of it's like bigotry is a big one. You know, I mean, you may only be, you know, you may not be racist, but, you know, you're sexist or misogynist, or you may not be sexist, misogynist, but you're homophobic, right? I mean, so in the broader scheme, it starts to look a lot like that punk rock culture I described, right? And so they have stepped back in their fucking ignorant cultural appropriation party here and went, this kind of looks like this punk rock thing that we never fucking understood to begin with. But it does. Like, dude, like we have all kinds of different groups that look different too and stuff and have their distinct things, but it's all, you know, the right or alt-right or alt-light or whatever. So like, we're the new punk rock. And I got fucking like blaring news for you fools. You fucking ain't. Like, one of the things that united all of these punk rock things was freedom of expression, solidarity with like those oppressed by power, and fucking virulent anti-authoritarianism. You blue line flag, cop supporting, military bootlicking, Trump licking morons couldn't possibly be punk rock. Now, that doesn't mean I'm punk rock, and who gives a shit if I am or not? One thing I do know is you ain't. You cannot be right wing and be a punk rocker. Now, whether I got the bona fides to cut it or not, that's a whole nother fucking story, and who gives a shit, right? But one thing I do know is I've been a part of this thing my whole life. I'm almost 48 years old, and I went to my first gig at like when I was 12, I think. So I've been around this thing for a long time, and there isn't a single thing within the rhetoric and the ideology within the alt-right that I recognize from punk rock. other than when we had that little pesky problem with Nazi boneheads back in the late 80s and early 90s that got fucking handled. But yeah, I just wanted to address, is alt-right the new punk rock? Nope.